Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1, whether it's happening. And I guess we're not off to the races. We're after the races. Welcome to She Loves the Grid, another episode. Hi, Dianne. And I'm Claire.
Hello. What a weekend.
Yeah, I think that's part of my brain. It's scrambled because, oh my gosh.
Same. I mean, everybody was ready to come back to racing. We were just so excited to get back on the grid, and then they did not disappoint. The weather, the cars, like there's so much to talk about this week, and I
The
love it.
unexpected craziness. We'll just do it quickly. How was your week?
It was a week, so
It was a week. Yeah, I know. It was a week. Mine was too. I keep talking about my neck and my upcoming apartment move and getting my own bed, and I can't wait because I've not been feeling well because of all of that. So I can't
yes,
wait.
no, that's
One more
gonna be
week.
so awesome. I know. I think the highlight of my week was getting away for a lunch with some friends and just having a really nice afternoon. But that was the highlight.
I feel you. Feel you. All right. Well, we'll just keep going. All right.
Did do it.
This week and this week in F1.
Oh yeah. This weekend as well. Okay, so silly season. This seems like so long ago. Silly season this week. It came out rumors that Alex Albon was holding formal or informal conversations with at least half of the grid. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I felt like both he and then James have said, like, Alex is kind of the future at Williams, and he's a leader and he's gonna stay there. But then I kind of thought, like, it kind of makes sense though, because he is performing really well. I've always thought he was a good driver. I was really bummed when Red Bull kind of, kicked him to the curb, if you will. And why not see what you're worth? Like, what is your value out there? And then you can utilize that for negotiation. So I don't know that I think he's going to actually leave Williams, especially when you think about what's remaining as far as cars, because we know that K-Mag and Nico were Haas announced this week that they're re-signing for this year or for next year. So there's two seats that are gone. Would he go back to AlphaTauri? I don't know. Who
I
knows?
don't.
Like,
I couldn't see that.
yeah, like why? I think they'll, especially, well, we'll get into the stuff with Daniel, but I think especially with what happened to Daniel this week, um, I think they're going to continue to give him another chance. So I could see them extending his contract too. So I don't know. I think it could be a good negotiating tactic for Alex. I don't think we talked about this last week, and I know you and I talked about it just briefly, but there was a rumor going around this week, and it was purely a rumor that Lance was going to retire and go into tennis. So if you don't know, like, Lance was a really good junior tennis player in Canada. But apparently, this rumor came from a podcast with Martin
Yep.
Brundle, and then Tony, who I think is known as F1 Tony. And Martin was just saying he could see in like a year to a year and a half's time Lance hanging it up. And he was just speculating that he wasn't sure if racing is really Lance's love, and mentioned that he was a tennis player back in the day. And so would it have been, tennis something that he was more in love with and maybe should have gone that route? So it was pure speculation, happened a couple weeks ago on a podcast, and then somehow it got picked up this week and it started flying all over the place. So there you go.
They even talked about it during one of the commentators did over the weekend. I was like, that just was weird. Yeah. And I wonder, part of me for just a brief moment during today's race, because I know everyone's listening on Tuesday when we release or whenever you listen, but we always record, we usually record right after the race, and that's why we're recording. But he seemed just off today, and I don't know if maybe was he distracted with all this kind of banter going back, messing with his focus. I had a brief thought of that, then I was like, oh, and something happened in the race and thought left my mind. So
no,
yeah, pretty much.
I mean, we could talk more about that too as we talk about them, but I do feel today it was like, this is Lance. this is where Lance has always been since I like 13th, 14th place. I don't even know where he finished up, to tell you the truth. But like, I just feel like that's kind of Lance. And we'll talk about that more when we get to Aston Martin, because I think there's a really good question there about, should he continue as a driver? I didn't hear any of his post-race interviews, so I don't know what his deal was. But you ready for some fun facts before we get into the rest of the team?
Get some fun facts, because it's going to be a long one, folks, because there was just a lot that happened. So
a lot happening. Okay, here's some Red Bull fun facts for you after today's win by Max. So Red Bull has won 23 of the past 24 races. That goes into last year. We're only on race, 14 today? So, because next week I think is 15. Monza, Monza is 15. So that goes back to last season. Talk about dominating. I mean, people are talking about Red Bulls dominating this year. This goes back into last year. They are killing it. With the win today, Max is now tied with Michael Schumacher for 9 straight wins. I mean, I feel like we kind of thought that was going to happen. And then also, it came out this week, the earliest that Max can win the World Driver Championship is in Singapore. It's a night race. And that would be the earliest anyone has ever secured that driver championship. So there you have it. Some fun facts for you.
There you have it.
The team just keep rolling. So
AlphaTauri, poor Daniel. I mean, he just gets in to finally get back in the seat, and then and I think he knew. I mean, if those haven't heard, during FP2, he went into the wall and he yelled out, my hand. He knew it. He knew that he broke his hand. He knew it. Yeah. He knew something was bad, but he broke his hand.
Yeah. I mean, when I put that on our story, like that whole video clip, because he knew instantly. And even when I saw later more of the video footage with him getting out of the car, like the marshal was coming close and he said, no, he was like waving his finger at him, and he was holding his left hand, kind of up and just getting himself out with his right hand. Like, it. I broke my 5th metacarpal earlier this year. If you've been listening to us all this time, I don't know which hand. I mean, it's his left hand, but I don't know which metacarpal it is that he broke. But you know it as soon as it happens. And from what I've heard, he did go to Barcelona. He's meeting with Lance's doctor that did Lance's wrists earlier this year. In case you're new to F1, Lance Stroll broke both of his wrists prior to the start of the season, or just prior to, in a biking accident. So he's going there, might need surgery. I would just highly recommend the surgery. They said it was a clean break. Just do the surgery so it doesn't continue to slip, which if you don't do surgery, it probably can. So highly recommend. But I'm so glad, because we know how quickly Lance got back in the car after his surgery. So fingers, like you and I were talking, might be a little different, because when your fingers have to go inside, the steering.
Like this. Well, it's the metacarpal, so it's between the wrist and the finger, so it's down in here. So I don't know, this versus the wrist strength, I don't know. But what I thought was interesting, and I know we're going to talk about the race later, it's all a mix, so it's just going to get mixed in, was Joe wrecked. When you and I were both commenting, his hands were up and quick. And it's like, and that was something they were talking about. I think you were talking about how they teach drivers in Indy to, if you're going to hit the wall, just, as soon as you can, you've got to let go, because, you've got so much of that chance of causing a break.
Yeah. That just like that hitting, the wall, all of that, you're holding the steering wheel and you're no doubt gripping it. So now you're already stressed, right? They say, that's why drunk people don't get hurt often, because they're relaxed. And when you're like this, your wrists take all of that. They absorb it all.
And their hands go inside, right? It's like an opening that their hands are going in too. So they get, anyway. Yeah, that was kind of crazy. But then of course, Liam Lawson got called up, and he only had FP3,
which was crazy. I mean,
and not even a full FP3 because
no. And I don't think he's driven the AlphaTauri. Like, he's the reserve driver for Red Bull. He was actually before Daniel as far as like the reserve driver status, at the beginning of the season. Daniel wasn't their second or their very first call up as a reserve driver. It's Liam Lawson. So I think he's done more in the Red Bull over the last year or so than the AlphaTauri. So yeah, he didn't really. Poor guy. Like, hi, get in. Like, we need to do a seat fit. We need to do the jump out test. Like, let's go. But it's such a challenging track. So I mean, good for him for stepping in, and we'll talk more about all of that stuff, but also a great opportunity to maybe show some of the teams that do have some openings that like you can just jump in and do what you need to do. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see. Haas did also have an upgrade this weekend. It was a front wing. As far as I know, that's all it was. But then Kevin messed his up in FP3 or no, maybe in qualifying. So he did not have the front wing change on the grid during today's race. So it was just Nico that had that. So there you have it. I don't even know. Williams looking pretty good.
Looking good.
No upgrades. I think it was Alex that said before the race, I think he I think he flew with George maybe to the race and for the weekend. And he said they were going to be rubbish or something like, yeah, they were going to be rubbish this weekend. And then holy cow, which I think is even more impressive because as we said last week, James, the principal, said they're not putting any more money into the car this year, or they're not going to bring more upgrades or what have you. They're really going to be concentrating on next year. But yeah, that was really good to see them. And then to have Logan, the first American in 20 years to qualify in the top 10 of an F1, like that was good for him. He's making a case for keeping that seat next year. You got to do it. I don't know. What else? McLaren.
Yeah, McLaren. They did. You've got it. What they did. They made a small upgrade, right?
Yeah, on their rear wing, and God loves Sam Collins. He gets in there and does little stuff. So if you're not ever watching him, just go in there and watch. But they did something a little different, and I mean, it's going to be kind of hard to show it, but their rear wing has kind of like a little cutout. So they just kind of like separated it from the lower part or the lower element. So they used to, I think that's where the end plate used to be, but it's rounded. And so I don't know how to describe it. It goes like this, and I'm trying to use my hands if you're watching the YouTube video, but it kind of goes like this, and then here's this part. So it would go like this. And so it just is it's like, I don't know. I guess it's like a new trend. Go watch Sam Collins. That's his job.
Hashtag Sam Collins.
Hashtag Sam Collins. But it's a newer trend. Okay, so AlphaTauri's using it, Alpine's using it, Mercedes is using it, although not as drastic. So just go check that out. I think that it was definitely helping them. You could see in qualifying, especially that kind of a setup. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody else, kind of does that. I'm not even going to try to explain the rest of it because it's just not going very well. Go watch Sam Collins.
We need to that. So.
But did you notice on the Alfa Romeo there you had a different livery, sort of?
I thought I noticed something on the. Was it on the front wing, right?
Yes, on the front wing. It wasn't the whole car, which I think would have been cooler. So they had this graffiti artist come, and there's actually is a version of the car with like graffiti all over it, and it's really cool looking. But on the front wing, they had I think it said Alfa Romeo, right? And then it was also on their jumpers, whatever we call those. And then
I thought they said they
else.
put their name too. I thought they put their name, the driver's name, and graffiti as well on the side of the car. Because I
Yes.
saw that, I was like, wait, that's not always been there.
No, it was special. So the name and maybe the number, I don't know, but it was really kind of cool. I thought it was pretty awesome. I liked it. Throw a little something
I'm
in there.
glad you mentioned that because I saw it and I was going to ask you, and then I completely forgot about it. So
Yeah.
that was really interesting.
And then Joe, I mean, we can talk about him more, but we know his seat is possibly open. And before this weekend, I was a little worried about him. I might still be a little worried about him, but he did pretty good today. Just, it was very unlucky, but I might still be a little bit worried about him. So yeah, I don't know. Anyways.
And Aston Martin, I mean, I know the one thing you've got in here in our notes is talking about the loophole and putting that tiny winglet, and then it just didn't work right because they were having to be too ginger with the jack. They had to have done some other things, or they undid what they did before that screwed the car up, because that car was flying. Fernando was flying today. I mean, I was just on my seat, and I did not expect that, which is why I did not predict him in the top. And I thought about it, but holy cow, was he flying? I was screaming at the TV.
Yeah, it was, like you said, whatever they had done, thinking they were making even more tweaks to make the car better. When was it? Around Canada? Somewhere around there. They undid it all. Like, I hope they just went back and they're like, what was working? And now, let's move forward from there, because he was so good today. Off of the starts, he had as good a starts as he could on all of the restarts. So like, he just did. He was amazing. So yay to Aston Martin. I mean, and honestly, like, I can't imagine that Papa Stroll was going to allow that to continue. Like, after all that they've done, and the team as well. Like, you're not going to keep letting that happen. What else? McLaren, for Oscar, this was his first time at the track. So he did pretty good. Crashing in FP2 wasn't great, but but he did all right today. I don't know. Practice. What do we have? Practice. I don't even know.
First thing I thought was neat, I just want to start this off, was the rookie rule. So there's a rookie rule, which I had learned about, and I may not say it because I did not go back and double check everything, but what I read Friday, because it interested me, was that every team starting 2022 has to put at least 2 rookies in at least one practice, typically FP1, in each season. And a rookie is defined as a racer who has not competed in at least 2 Grand Prix.
Okay.
So that's why we did not see Carlos in FP1, because Ferrari was exercising their rookie rule for at least one of their 2 required races. Yep. There's an article that speculates that the 3 teams who have rookies this year would have already met that rule because they had rookies that started. However, I question Nick DeVries, because Nick DeVries competed in one last year. So with him coming and competing as soon as he hit his second race, he then would have competed for 2, and he's technically not in the rookie rule anymore.
Yeah.
So him doing it again, unless the 2 free practices counts as 2 free practices. I thought it was 2 different races. I have to go back and get the specifics. But again, speculation from an article I read. But then I go and I think about, but at the same time, AlphaTauri might be okay because now they've brought Lawson up.
I was just going to say,
well, that was on Friday. Then later Friday, it's like, oh, well, now there's Lawson.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So maybe AlphaTauri's met their rookie rule because they would have had DeVries and Lawson. Yeah. So just an interesting thing. So between now and the end of the season, every team has to pull up at least 2 rookies and to do at least one practice. So we'll see some FP1s without our regular drivers.
Exactly. And they tend to do that. They pull up their reserve drivers generally, or maybe somebody that they're looking at, but it does tend to happen later in the season. And so last year, I think I was telling you, when we were chatting earlier this week that last year in Austin, there were several rookies that took part in FP1. I think it was all just FP1. You could do it whenever, but you don't probably want to do it FP3. So we got to see a few different drivers driving, because they will kind of leave it until like maybe the end of the year. So it's a neat experience for them, and it's a neat experience, I felt, as a fan, to see maybe somebody who's an F2 or an F3 driver come up and drive the car. So, and you kind of know too, like, who you don't want. There was somebody for Haas last year they brought up in Austin. I was like, get them out of that car. Like, this is terrible. I don't even remember who it was, but it was awful.
You would imagine they can't do that on sprint weekends, right? Because so it has to be non-sprint weekends, and there's more sprint races this year. So they've got to be definitely a lot more strategic this year when they do that. So it was just a neat new rule to learn about. I know we're not going to spend a lot of time going over each of the practices. I do want to point out that between the 3 practices, we had 6 red flags.
Oh my goodness. That's
one
crazy.
in FP1, 1 in FP2, and 3 in FP3.
I love your count, your count impression. And I never even watched FP3 because it was on at like 3 a.m. here. And by the time I got up, it was time for
it was raining from the very start. And, Max almost lost grip and hit the wall. Like, he almost went off at the very beginning. 10 minutes in, K-Mag out, red flag. 35 minutes left, Joe through the gravel, red flag. Lawson actually spun out, but he corrected himself and was able to keep going. Wow. We had a red flag. So it was nuts. It was nuts. And Russell was showing well in that, by the way. The top 3 were Verstappen, Russell, and Perez.
Oh, wow. In FP3?
Mm-hmm.
I know. Mercedes, I feel like they looked pretty decent before all the real stuff started happening.
I don't know what anything you want to call it on FP1 and 2, but it was just pretty much between the rookie rule and red flags and rain
and Daniel. He did say, and poor Oscar. And Oscar's probably like, I am sliding under the radar, because when he crashed first, it was kind of like, but then with Daniel crashing right after him, and then his whole hand, I feel like the whole Oscar crash just kind of slid under the radar. So
he's probably not earlier, Oscar crashing in FP2, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was the car that crashed right before Danny. All the focus was on Danny and breaking his hand.
Yeah, and Daniel said that he saw the McLaren too late, and it was either hit Oscar or hit the wall. And so he went into the wall. So, that's really all I have about that. But qualifying was really good. Oh, my gosh. It was so good. Insane. It was sunny to start. FP3 was a hot mess. Like you were saying, it was all...
it had been raining, so the track was still wet from FP3. So that's why I noted it was dry weather, but a wet track. And they kept noting how high the winds were.
Okay, did they say what? Because all weekend I kept seeing they were showing the flags, right, when they show the crowd, and they were like straight up and straight out, like.
And they kept saying over and over, the winds were high, winds are high, winds are high. So I noticed. I think I noted that every one of the cues, like the qualities, that the winds are high again, winds are high again.
Yeah, I know you were happy because in Q1 those cars were lined up ready to get out there.
Like, you're so happy. Wait till the end, which Q3 killed me. But yes, because I'm like, and in Q3 we had 2 red flags, by the way.
Oh, that's right. That's right. No, I think they knew, like, you've got to get out there, get a lap in while it's somewhat, I mean, at least it's not raining. Everybody was on inters, right? But at least, like, get out there and get going. Max wasn't happy because he felt he was slipping and sliding everywhere.
He complains every week.
Yeah. But it was so crazy because early on it was just like, all these drivers were, the leaderboard was just all over the place. And you had like Ocon and Albon and Sargent and Lando and Oscar, like all up in the top 5. So this is what okay. So a couple different times this weekend, I was thinking like, this is, I think what they were hoping would happen with like maybe leveling out that cost cap. Teams are all stepping it up. You have multiple different teams up in, like the top 10. You've got drivers that, 2 Williams drivers were up, near the top, and granted it's Q1, but how exciting is that? Like, this is super fun to watch right now. I hope it continues like this the rest of the year.
I was kind of shocked that Ocon missed out in Q1, that he got knocked out in Q1. Some of them, as you noted, like Charles barely made it into Q2. I mean, there were some shocking results there at the end that I was like on the edge of my seats, like just wondering if somebody.
Insane. I could not believe that Charles was down that far in Q1. And then when he was coming, I guess, back into the pits, he radioed his team with a whole like long sermon about, how they barely made it into Q2. If they continue with this, and I think you had said it was about the tires primarily, and then traffic, sending him out into traffic. If they continue with this, they're not going to make it out of Q2. Like, he was just laying it all out there, which I don't blame him. Like, and we could talk about this later, but even in his post-race presser today, he just seems frustrated and like he's resigned to whatever's happening. But out in Q1, we had Zhou, Ocon, Magnussen, Bottas, and Lawson. And Albon was on top of the times in Q1, if you remember correctly. And that's the second time this season that he has topped the times in qualifying.
Here's what Carlos said. Come on, now
Charles.
Let's be on it. I mean, Charles. Yes, I was looking at all of our comments back and forth are usually about those two, though. So I saw Carlos saying goodbye. Charles said, come on now, let's be on it. The traffic is the most important. Tire warm up, everything. This is important. This is our only priority we have. Let's focus on that and everything will be fine. Otherwise, we'll be out in Q2. We are lucky already to be in.
Yep.
And you might send it to me.
They need to hear it. I am proud, honestly, of Charles, like stepping it up and putting more of this out there. Or maybe they're just letting us hear more of it. I don't know, but good for you, Charles. Tell them how it is. Like, that's all I could say.
There's a couple other favorite quotes I had of the weekend, though. That was the commentators, because one of them commented about the weather being, more chaotic than his time in Scotland. He was Scottish. And the way he said it was just hysterical. But my other one was after another one of the wrecks during quali, and they were talking about the crane that lifts the cars over. And he's like, it's a sort of grabby thing.
I love it.
Like,
was it David Coulthard who said that? I can't remember.
I was just dying laughing. David said, if Sam were here, he would tell you exactly what it is. Yeah, but it's a sort of grabby thing.
Which I agree. I feel like I hear that and I know exactly what he's talking about.
Sort of grabby thing came out a bunch this weekend. Anyway, Q2.
Yes, it did. And the grabby thing could have been in a couple other spots because it took a little longer to get a couple cars out of there. But yeah, the grabby things are only at certain corners.
So Q2 it was drying, so we worked finally. And it was drying, it took a while. I noted the time they called out the dry line started really forming at 6:30 left. So it was pretty far into Q2 that they finally got a strong dry line.
Yeah, but then it did really like hit. It was kind of crazy. Max was fast early, like, geez Louise. Carlos. So was Charles at the bottom in Q1. Carlos I think he was in 15th at that point in Q2. And he told them, Carlos, again, being his own strategist and, should be getting that strategy salary in addition to his driver salary, told them that they need brand new inters and they need to do it on the last lap. And it was truly all or nothing. We thought he could go around twice, but he kind of just did, getting his tires in a warm spot that second to the last. And then it was all all or nothing. And if a yellow flag had come out at that point, screwed. Like they were betting it all, like on one lap. And fortunately, it did get him into Q3, but
The anxiety
anxiety is crazy. And let's see, I noticed Perez was at least a full second behind Max. Like that was, I mean, Max, it doesn't matter cars. Like it just, he does what he does. Sargent, though, Sargent, the
I
last
know. We're so
car.
happy for him.
Oh my gosh, the last car to come across the line, pushing was it Gasly or Stroll? I think he pushed Stroll down, right?
Oh, Gasly was P16, so push Gasly out.
Oh, so it was Gasly.
I mean
Well,
P11. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was insane. And it was, I think, his first time, right? It was his first time into Q3. So that's
Yeah.
where I was like, Logan is making a case. Like, first of all, that Williams, amazing on this track. They weren't expecting it. And then Logan making a case to keep his contract, like keep his seat for next year. Absolutely amazing.
Stroll, right?
I thought it was Stroll.
You're right. It was Stroll.
Okay. I was thinking
Stroll,
it was
Stroll
Stroll.
was P11. Yeah, he pushed Stroll out. Stroll was P11.
But I mean, again, Stroll, like you're out in Q2 and your teammate is what did he was fifth? Alonso, I think. Not good. But Q3, dry enough. We could get DRS enabled again, finally. The red flag, we had two of them you mentioned.
And that was Logan. I felt so bad because he was starting out so strong, and then
and he had just come across the line, and wasn't he like in second or third or something?
Yeah, second fastest, like the second fastest time.
Yeah,
it was
for Q3.
Yeah,
granted, it was still early. It was
and
still
I
early.
was telling my partner, I'm like, if they're talking about rain coming in, if he can hold that time,
yeah,
we'll see where he's at. But then at the end, he still got pushed down P10. I'm like, the worst he's going to be is P10, but
which is good. And again, like we said, the first time an American in 20 years has done it. But what happened, I feel like it wasn't. I mean, his tire hit the white line. Yeah. And because it was wet, that's what sent him in. And I know James Vowles said afterwards, like, he wasn't mad at him for it because he was already doing so well and he was trying to find, the limits. And that's what they're kind of asking them to do is get out there and push. And so he said, he wasn't sad about it. So, yeah. And then our second red flag.
Then the second red flag, and we go into Claire's anxiety because at that point, it was around that point that we had half the grid, half the grid. It's only 4 people had times. Only 4 drivers had times. 6 did not have times at that point, including Alonso. I was having a heart attack.
Yeah, you were.
Because there was a chance that the rain could pick up so much so that they decide we're just going to stay with what we got because they can call it.
They could call it, but thank goodness they did it. But poor Charles, like what in the world? He was kind of all over the place anyways. I feel like he kept going off, and
yeah, so many times. I think at one point they called that the Tarzan corner.
It is called Tarzan corner. Yeah.
Yeah. If you didn't catch it, you just go straight. And if you were lucky, you didn't go into the gravel. You just could follow the extra road around. So which happened a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I think Charles hit it 4 to 6 times. Like he hit it a lot.
Totally. He did. And then on this one, he just went a little wide and it hit the grass. And it just like sent him.
I love the picture of him just sitting in the grass. I love the picture of him just sitting in the grass.
I know. That was hysterical. I posted that on our social media because he's just sitting in a lawn chair, like watching. And then somebody posted a video when Max was, I guess, he pulled in, to the first little, how they do the little stands. And Charles just leaning against the fence, watching it on the big screen. Like all the fans are behind him. Oh, poor Charles. I don't mean to make fun. But now that I think about it, like he didn't take a new gearbox. Because I
No, he
know
did
that
not.
that was a concern that he damaged the gearbox when the rear hit the wall, but then it's like
He
just
didn't
dawning on me
receive the first
now.
penalty. Yeah.
Yeah, he did not, must not have taken one. So, but awesome to see Lando on the front row. I was like, oh my gosh.
It was amazing. He
And
was
Alex
really
Albon on the
hard.
second row.
I know, that was crazy. I mean, I was happy where Alonso was, but I was really happy to see those up there. And Russell was up there because Russell even said after coming back from the break, he felt more refreshed and he hadn't been showing well in qualifying. And to qualify where he was really good,
Good. Yeah, it was very, very exciting. Like, I think that was amazing. And I know Sainz did say he was what, sixth or something.
Yeah.
He said he was actually surprised he was that far up the grid. Like, they looked so bad, all the way through everything. And so I think he was a little impressed, surprised. I don't know. Maybe both, that he actually was as far up as he was. So there you have it. But today, the race was all about strategy. When you have actually, I think right as the formation lap or right before the formation lap started, Fernando's engineer came on the radio and said, "We've got rain in 5 minutes." And so you're starting on one, oh my goodness, it's going to be raining. And then throughout the race, dry, wet, dry. Like, your strategy had to be spot on, like spot on.
There were 6 and 7 pit stops by drivers in this race.
I believe it. Yeah, you have to.
I mean, the two that hit 7, or there were several that hit 7, but it was Liam, George, and Lance had 7. But most had 6. K-Mag, Valtteri, Esteban, Lando, Checo, Max. Had 6. Lance, several of them had 6. That's tire changes. The number of tire changes.
How many did Alex Albon just have? 2 or maybe 3? Because he was on those softs for 44 laps.
He had 4.
4. Okay.
4. Yeah.
So yeah, I knew he had to have been really low because he was on that for a long time. What I always find really interesting, and I think the rain, they had mentioned it before the race started, like the clouds and everything, and they didn't know, like, are we going to have rain? Are we not going to have rain? But it was coming from the west, right? So it was coming from across the beach onto the track. And the teams will send people out to the beach, like in Monaco, they'll send them up to the mountains, and their job is to sit there and then radio the team when they start feeling rain or drops or it starts pouring. So that way the teams can start like planning their strategy. So I always just picture like some dudes in Red Bull gear, maybe just sitting in a chair on the beach, like waiting to, send this stuff over. Like, I want to be that person. How do I get to be that person? But I just think that's kind of funny. But early, Perez, awesome strategy. He was the first one in, I think. I think somebody came in with him or right after him, but he would right in and put on those inters. And then, like, it was just like the heavens opened up.
He was the very first, and Charles was behind him by like 0.03 seconds.
Yeah. That I knew somebody came in with him, but so smart, because by the 4th lap, the people who were still on softs, they were struggling, and the people who had moved to the enters were like, really starting to, and so that was making everything just go like topsy-turvy. Absolutely craziness.
And it was Russell and Stroll who did not take their first one until the 4th lap.
Yes, and Russell, and we'll talk about that because we'll start breaking down the teams. He's not happy about that at all. Not at all. Let's start with AlphaTauri. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yuki had a long pit stop.
Oh my God. There was several of those today.
A lot of teams did have them. 3.9 seconds, 4 seconds. I had written those down for a couple other teams later on. Obviously Charles, but we'll talk about why that happened. But Yuki for sure. Then he and George bumped. Yuki got the 5-second penalty. I need to go back and look at that because I just blamed it on George because that's what I always do when George is involved. Because George always starts it generally. So I was very shocked that my little global treasure got hit with that 5-second penalty there. But their tire strategy, like I think overall, Yuki he had a really good race. And then they messed up the tire strategy. So that was like kind of prior to that red flag. But it pushed Yuki out of the points. And then you add the 5-second penalty on. I swear he was running like 6th, 8th for a while. He was 10th, and he was kind of moving up a little bit. It just stinks because I feel like Yuki does get really unlucky with some of that stuff.
I mean, without the 5-second penalty, he still would not have made points.
I know because of the tire strategy. They screwed him up.
Yeah.
They
Because
screwed him up.
he would have been 13th had he not got the 5-second penalty. And that would have still put him 4 seconds behind 12th. And yeah.
Boo. Where did he finish up then with the 5-second penalty? Where is he?
16th.
Boo. Darn it. Yeah. I mean, AlphaTauri, like, come on. Again, like I said at the beginning of this section, strategy was everything today. And they messed him up. He was running good, and they messed him up, and he finished outside the points, which just stinks. Liam, though, I will tell you, he finished 13th, right? Liam Lawson finished 13th in his first race. And let me tell you this. That was the first time the first time he drove that car on slick tires was on the formation lap. Because in FP3, he must have been on wets or I don't know, qualifying. That can't be right? Qualifying was he on inters?
Qualifying, he wrecked out, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
No, wait, did he?
No, he didn't.
It's so
but he wasn't, because he qualified, he was out in
Q1.
Q1, and they were on wets to begin with.
That's
so,
right. So that is correct then. I'm right. Yay me. Which is kind of crazy. And then...
But get this, if he did not have the 10-second penalty...
He didn't?
If he did not.
If he did not. Yeah, no.
9th.
What?
Because he was 26 off first, 26 seconds off first. If you take 10 seconds off, that would have been 16.147 seconds. And if you look up to 16.14 seconds, that puts him between Alex and Oscar. He would have been 9th.
Oh, I still don't even know who he impeded. So if you
I
guys
don't know, but the thing is I have to go back and listen to the clip, but the commentator said that the radio was going back and forth, and it was not due to his driving. So I don't know if the engineers had given him direction, and so he was listening to the engineers. So it was caused by direction he was giving, and not by what he personally did, by his decision, kind of thing.
Well, that just stinks because, I mean, for what he had to work with jumping in FP3 in the rain, crazy rainy day today, he really did do a good job. So major props to him. Helmet Marco, a.k.a. Chatty Cathy, prior to the race said that he really just wanted Liam to get familiar with the car today, like get some experience, be ready for Monza next week. However, in the after race press conference, Liam told one of the F1 people he doesn't know if he is racing in Monza next week. That's up to Chatty Cathy, and he'll probably decide early, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know. But I mean, they might maybe put another driver in there if they want to see somebody else and how they perform. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But he really did as good a job as he could have.
And it was for impeding K-Mag in the pit lane.
Oh. But not like an unsafe release or anything? Just like...
No, it's for penalized for impeding K-Mag in the pit lane. So.
Interesting. Okay. All righty. Well, again, he did awesome. Alfa Romeo, Joe, I thought was doing really good. Like he was running up there high, and I know there were cars like out of position, and you had, with all the pit stops and everything at the beginning, but he was up there like running in third for a hot second, and he looked pretty good. They don't have the pace in that car to do
Yeah.
it. And when that rain came down, like he just aquaplaned. He said he aquaplaned. He was at 19 G's at that point. So it was a hard hit when he went into that barrier. So thank goodness he's okay. Because, oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I felt really bad for him the way that ended. But I mean, and Botas, like, I don't know. Was he there? I just like, I just I don't even think I heard that much about him.
He finished 15th.
Okay.
So, above Yuki and George, basically, because the other three didn't finish.
Yeah.
And George is the end because he got that puncture. So, so technically he finished above Yuki when it comes to actually competing.
Wow. Yowza. They're just there. I mean, Joe, they've had a few glimpses of where it's like, ooh, Alfa Romeo, but for the most part, I forget they're even around. There's nothing remarkable about their season at all. It's like they're just getting through the season to be done with the season and like move on. I don't know.
Yeah, and they are second to last in points right now. So.
Yeah. Which surprises. Who's last? Haas.
AlphaTauri.
No. What's that?
AlphaTauri.
Oh, that's because only Yuki's the one pulling points, and then they screw him up with strategy like they did today and pull him right back out of the points.
Yeah, AlphaTauri after today has 3 points. Alfa Romeo 9. Well, neither one of them got points.
That's
so. And Haas 11. So none of those three teams got points. All the other teams got points today.
Wowza. All right. Well, let's talk about Williams. Ooh.
Williams got points today. They got 4 points, which pulled them apart from their tie. So now they've got 15.
Oh, good. What place are they in the construction?
Seventh.
Oh, seventh. I was like,
seventh. But I mean, because we remember I did the thing on them. They haven't been that high in several years, so that's
yeah.
I
was really hoping for double points, but obviously that didn't happen with Logan. But yeah, that kind of sucked. Do we know why Logan?
Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't know what happened other than when James Wells was explaining, he had a hydraulic problem, and like you were talking about in quali how he hit the line, was trying to find track limits. He commented after the race that he hit the same line that he'd been hitting all weekend, and that's where he had an issue, and that's where he caused some damage and caused the hydraulic problem.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was earlier in the race. That was like earlier in the race, and that's why he kept having problems performing and getting slower and slower and slower.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because James did say that there was a hydraulic issue, which is what caused him to crash. That was on lap 16. But even prior to that, like he started 10th, but somehow he was in 20th.
I think that he was losing pressure because of that. That's what he was explaining. He says it affects the steering. It affects a lot of stuff. So I think he just was struggling. And that was way I'm in my mind picturing it is that because he was hitting that curb so much that he hit and caused probably a mild leak. Yeah. And it was just getting worse and worse. And as he slowly was losing pressure, he finally lost enough pressure that by the time he crashed, that's when he had the crash. But he just was starting to get more and more like less responsiveness from the car, and it was probably just getting harder and harder to drive it. So I think he just was having less performance slowly.
Yeah.
I'm speculating, but it kind of just makes sense based on his performance. And there was nothing remarkable that happened. It was just and we went from performing well to not.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But then it makes me wonder, like, if he was struggling that much, why take that? Why not retire the car like Ferrari did with Charles? Like, why keep him out there? And maybe because James did say they made some mistakes with strategy and decisions. And so maybe that was something else he was referring to is why not retire Logan if that's the issues that you're having? You're not going to fix a hydraulic issue during a pit stop. You're not going to get any better with that. So why not avoid the crash? Because now they've got more that they have to do to repair that car for Monza. So maybe that's in part what he was talking about. I thought he was just referring to strategy in general because they did.
I don't know. See what they come out this week if they say anything about it. Again,
Yeah.
major speculation. I could be wrong, but I just wonder if that had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Like you said, Albon did really well. I mean,
he was great. Oh, I'm so happy for him. So
yeah, and he got 4 points for the team, so that's good.
That's amazing. I mean, especially when you don't think that you're going to be doing well, and then you come in with 4 points, and you're running up into the top 10. The majority.
Well, as fast as that McLaren has been all weekend and over the last couple of weeks, he actually finished almost a second and a half, so a second and 0.4-ish ahead of Oscar.
Yeah. Let's talk about McLaren because
just 2 behind Lando, so he split the McLarens. He was like right in between the 2 of them.
Good for you, Alex Albon. I love to see that. So here's the thing, McLaren. What happened? I mean, their strategy. I know Lando was saying like the strategy not good at all.
He sounded like to me he was trying to answer without getting in trouble. Like he was trying to say, F this, I'm not happy. They screwed me over. This was not right. Like he sounded like because he's such a calm, cool character. But that was like, it just felt like he wanted to say so much more.
Yeah.
But he didn't. There was more to that.
Lando this year has been far more candid with his comments than I feel like he has been in the past. So I'm kind of surprised that he did kind of keep it on the down low, but I don't blame him. Like you start on the front row and almost immediately you guys are both out of the points and you're both out of the points for a while, like fighting your way back into the points, both of them. I mean, it's good that they got double points, but still. But did you notice that at the very end, Lando was like this close to catching Lewis at the line?
So close. Yeah, so close. Like the commentators were saying that F1 at the end that if they had like a meter, he probably would have gotten past him. Like he just needed another meter. It was like that close. I thought he was going to do it. I was just going to push.
Yeah. It was good for Lando. Like, don't ever give up. And the same with Oscar. Like, I really thought the way Oscar was attacking back in his way back into the points, like just not giving up at all, like using what they could with the car to get back in there. Amazing.
Yeah, and Norris is now 8th. He didn't change. He stayed. He keeps his 8th place in the driver series. But Oscar dropped 1 in the driver series in the standings.
Okay. I mean, yeah, they should have definitely had a better race than they did. That is for sure. But it was also a crazy race. Again, strategy, major with the rain and everything else. Yeah, you really had to rely on your strategists to have a great race. But Alpine, oh my goodness. So Saturday, after Ocon was out in the first, Gasly out in the second, right? Q2. The I'm going to use air quotes, fans on the Alpine page were just going after them so hard. Like, this is typical. You guys are terrible. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Gasly on the podium today. Ocon also in the points, right?
Yep. He got a point.
Yeah. So he was 10th, right? So, I mean, you still got double points and a podium today. And don't forget, they don't really have a team principal. Not really. They don't have a team principal right now. Their leadership is all interim people. And I
know you got the penalty, right? He still got, like, Gasly got the penalty, right? And he still got up there. He was 3.5 seconds behind Fernando.
Oh, wow. Wowza. Not too shabby.
3.3 actually. 3.3 seconds behind Fernando at the end.
I am just so happy for him.
I don't think it would have mattered because of when he served the penalty, because that was after a red flag and all that. So, I mean, if you think about it, even the 10 seconds for for Liam earlier, it doesn't really matter because they didn't serve the penalties after the red flag. They served it before the red flag. So it doesn't really matter, actually. So.
Well, even Gasly's penalty, it didn't matter much anyways because he caught up to Sainz and passed him
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I was thinking about it logistically. I don't want anybody coming back at me and go, well, it doesn't really matter because when they were served. Yeah, actually, now I think about it, it doesn't even matter. But it's still, that's still pretty impressive how quickly he got up there and reset himself, because after the red flag, because of when the red flag it was identified, when they reformed the order, Gasly had to be put back further in the restart lineup, right? And so he had to retain that and get past Checo and get past a Red Bull.
Yeah, but he didn't technically get past the Red Bull. But
no, he didn't. That's true.
It wasn't necessarily on merit that he was on that podium. But
this is so true too. This is so true. But if he hadn't kept the speed up, if he hadn't kept that distance to the Red Bull, I should say, if he didn't keep that gap, because the Red Bulls are so fast, that was pretty impressive to keep the gap, because we saw that in the last couple of laps, Max got almost 4 full seconds ahead of Fernando, and Fernando, is very seasoned and has a really good car.
Yeah.
So to take that Alpine and keep that Alpine close enough that with Checo's penalty, he was able to, because he could have been further back and the penalty of Checo's wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think being that close after the red flag, he knew
he had to push it.
Gasly knew what he needed to do to stay close. He was told, Checo's got a 5-second
penalty. Pushed him up 2 spots in the Drivers' Championship, too.
Gasly.
Yeah, he's now
those podium points, they make a difference.
Yeah, because he got 15 points. It pushed him up 2 places. Ocon dropped down 1. They're 1 point from each other. Actually, Ocon and Piastri both have 36 points, and Gasly has 37.
Okay. And Ocon was not happy. He was so mad that he was put on wets. Everybody else was on inters, and he's like, this is the worst decision ever. I mean, he might not have said ever, but he was like, this was terrible. And then right after that, Checo goes off. So I don't think that the wets were necessarily a bad call. You just need that rain, I guess, to come down a little bit more. But after the red flag, boy, he was saying something to, I'm assuming it was his engineer in the pit lane, because his face, you couldn't see his mouth, but you could see his eyes, and he was having a conversation. He was
love to know what's going on there.
I need to go back and listen to his post press conference, because I would love to know if he said what he said in that situation. But listen, major props to Gasly, because he did hold his own that whole race. He was just kind of in there like a little shark, just waiting. And that's what he needed. Checo with the 5-second penalty. And we've talked about Alpine and their struggles this year, just having so many DNFs and whatnot. And so they're 6th in the Constructors' Cup with 73 points. Now, they're behind McLaren with 111, but they're way ahead of the next one behind them. So they're solidly in the middle pack. I mean, they're solidly in there pushing toward the lower middle.
Yeah, the lower middle, yeah.
Because last year they were 4th. So this is still not, awesome for that.
Good point. But they're catching. All right, let's go to your team.
Ferrari. Listen, poor Charles. That's all I can say. The bad pit stop. So here was the lowdown with that pit stop that took forever right at the beginning. Lap 1, right to lap 2. I don't know where you count it, but so the team was not ready with the inters. You see them, he comes in, and then here comes the guys out of the garage with the inters
running.
So what happened? Charles called the pit stop, told the team, I'm pitting. They supposedly told him no. Fred says Charles announced the pit stop as he was coming into the pits, so the team wasn't ready. So either way, they're putting it on Charles that he called the pit stop. The team wasn't ready. It was too late for him, for Charles to back out, which makes more sense with Fred's version of the story. You're already in the pit lane. You can't go back around again. which wouldn't have been a good idea anyways. Like the people that were on so it just is what it is. But yeah. So then on lap 8, I thought it was interesting because F1 TV played Carlos's engineer coming on the radio and saying, "Hey, Charles has wing damage." And Carlos is like, "Don't slow me down." And my first thought is, are you going to tell Carlos he has to stay behind Charles who's got wing damage? Is that where we're implying here? Like, who cares?
So, and this affects me how? Like,
right, exactly. That was my thought. So Carlos ends up going past him. Charles starts getting passed kind of left and right. After the race, you could tell that Charles was just not happy. He was frustrated. He didn't like the strategy, didn't like, any of it. Yeah, none of it. I don't even know.
Well, he lost a place in the driver's standings.
Yeah, because
so he dropped to 6th. Sainz went up to 5th, so he got 2 places up, and now he's ahead of Charles by 3 points.
Yeah, because they were pretty neck and neck, and it was like the last race where Charles did really well, and I was like, well, shoot, there it goes. But with the DNF and Carlos finishing where he did, I figured that Carlos would move back ahead.
And Charles now tied with Russell.
Yeah. Oh, okay, nice. But like Ferrari's not going to allow that to happen if they can help it. So they're gonna make sure Carlos does not finish in front of Charles as much as possible the rest of the season. But Carlos really did look steady, and I think like he said again, wasn't expecting much from that car, but he did it. And at the very end, I was like, you have 1 lap. Keep Hamilton behind you. Like Hamilton was on his booty. I'm like, just do it. Just do it. I was like willing him across that finish line. Just get across, hold him off. Like, you can do this. Like, and he did. So yay. And then Hamilton almost got caught by Lando, but
this is true.
Yay.
By 0.023 or something like that. It was really close.
Very close. But he did it. He hung on. So yay. Major props to Carlos.
Mercedes.
Yeah.
Wow. Just wow. I mean, like to see Russell, and all I could think of, that's why I predicted Russell on podium, is like to see how well he's been doing, starting so far in the pack, back in the pack, and progressing and progressing. I know it's not a track that has a lot of passing, though we saw a lot of passing and overtaking, but to see him doing that, and then and he was so, I liked his attitude there at the end. He's like, this, I forget what he said before, but then he goes, then I got a puncture. What are you going to do? And I was like, he just stuck it out, right? He just stuck it out, because I was watching on the F1 app, the actual race, the dots, right? And they're all going around, and there's Russell. Just slowly further and further behind. Just like the little engine that could, I'm going to finish this race. But I just felt so bad to start out so strong, and then
on just the second row to 18th.
And the only thing that's 18th is because the other 2 didn't finish.
Is why?
The other 2 didn't finish.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Actually, he was 17th. He was 17th. He was 17th because 3 didn't finish. Joe, Charles, and Logan.
Yeah. But I mean, almost very quickly he was down to 18th in the race. And that's when he came on and he was like, I was forecast for the podium. Like, how did we mess this up? And I thought, like, it's a little too early for that, George. Like, it is. But he also wasn't wrong in the end. But other issues kind of came into play. But, like,
I heard that, and I was thinking, it's woe is me and Mercedes.
Yeah, they do like to complain for sure. Like, again, and then they're like, woo, this is the best day ever when they do really well. But in his post-race presser, George was saying, like, I guess he was told that the rain was going to last 2 minutes. He's like, then the rain lasted 10 minutes. And he's like, we have to figure out why our forecast was so off. Because I think that was, the issue with their strategy is they said 2, it lasted 10, and that really put him out of position in a really, really big way.
I'd love to know why they chose to go on hard tires too. Like, no one else did that.
They were probably hoping they wouldn't have to pit again. Like maybe they were hoping no more rain, no more like, so we're just going to stay on the hards and other people are going to have to pit because they're on whatever. And that didn't work out either because then it rained again. So yeah, but he also had a really big snap and Lewis was right behind him. Did you see that? Where he just and it was like, how in the world? How did you stay on the track? Like,
what a save! What a
woo,
save!
Oh. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Yeah, I don't know. Just a sad, I think, overall weekend. I mean, they weren't horrible. Lewis seemed pretty steady, even though he spent a good part of the race in 13th place. He ended up 6th behind, no, 7th.
6th? No, he's 6th.
6th, okay. Behind Carlos. So he just quietly went about his business. And they both got points, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, George did not. For a while, I thought they were both going to get points.
Yeah.
George was 17th. That's right. But still, like, good job. Okay, now more.
Russell, Russell's still at 99 points. Hamilton is at 156, so he's 4th in the driver's series. He separated him and Alonso. Alonso still is 3rd, and Mercedes though still got a pretty good command in the Constructors' Cup.
Yeah,
with 255 points, but that's still less than half of Red Bull's.
Yeah, Red Bull is just
yeah.
So, it's their season. We're not even talking about them that much. Yeah, talk about your team.
Oh my gosh, like I said, whatever they undid or fixed, yay. And Fernando, I was like, oh my gosh, he's finally driving like he wants it, like he wants to get this. And I was noticing before the red flag, because I was paying attention. We need sponsorship from this F1 thing because I keep talking about their app. But while I was watching it on the TV, which is delayed a little bit, the app would show the actual standings, the data much sooner, like up to almost a minute sooner, like way soon, at least 30 seconds to a minute sooner. And then I would hear the audio there before the TV, so I had to turn the audio off.
Yeah.
And I kept the teams on so I could hear what the teams were saying. But I was watching the push between he and Perez and Max. And so for a while when Perez was 2nd and Alonso was 3rd, Perez was doing fairly well. And then he started getting further and further behind Max, where Alonso was catching up to Perez. And I'm just like, yes. Oh my gosh, he's pushing. And that Aston Martin was catching the Red Bull.
Yeah.
So that was just so exciting to me to see that. And we had a bad pit stop. I don't even want to talk about that, but
I mean, it didn't really come into play at all.
And he got the fastest lap of the day because he got
to keep it.
I think he kept it. Let me go double check because he got it before the rain hit. Yes, he got fastest lap of the day.
Nice.
He beat out Max by 2.08 seconds. No, that was the time of the day. Sorry. He beat him out by, no, not even that far. He beat him out by 0.052 seconds. But
he got the fastest lap and the extra point. That is awesome.
The fastest lap and the extra point. So
good for him. He really looked amazing on the starts. And in the little driver room, which is my favorite part of all the stuff, Max said, he was telling Pierre, like, Fernando is so quick in the rain. He's like, he was almost passing me, like on that very first, when the race first started. And I'm like, yeah, he really is. And not only did he get the fastest lap, Alonso was driver of the day today. So
did you see him? I just love that when he got out, he was just like that big smile, and he's just like, I just love his energy. I just love he just seems genuinely cool. And then I popped on the Twitter in the middle of the race while we were on red flag, and I just saw the video of him sitting on the go-karts, the carts at his racetrack at his little museum thing. And he's just doing donuts and stuff. He just seems like so much fun. Anyway.
He does. And he's funny. So like in his press conference or whatever, when they interviewed him right after they got out of the cars, he was joking and he's like, Yeah, I thought about attacking Max on the restart, but then I thought I might not make it out of here, because obviously it's Max's home race, all the Dutch fans, and he kind of did his little chuckle, which I loved. And the crowd right after, so like Max was coming up to do his interview, and the crowd was just like singing the "Oh Fernando Alonso" song. And they kind of had to stop and say, like, "Okay, Max," and then everybody it was silent right away. But like I mean, everybody loves Alonso. Like, how can you not? Like,
How
I
can you
was
not?
so happy for him to be back up there. And like you said, whatever they did to undo all of the damage after, Canada with the car, it worked. Like, he was great, except for Lance. Where did Lance finish up?
Lance finished 11th.
I mean, he ended up getting up there a little bit more.
It was a full second and a half, more than a second and a half out of the points.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, what are the conversations? I don't know if Lance had any issues or whatever, but I just wonder what other conversations back at the headquarters. Like, what if we had two drivers like Alonso? We could have two cars in the points. Lance did great at the beginning of the season, but he's kind of fallen back into that, 10th to 15th place.
Yeah, and he's still ninth in the drivers series, but he's got 47 points. So Norris above him has 75. And then below him is Gasly, who just jumped up and he's at 37. So
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, Red Bull. Well, I was going to say, is Aston Martin back? I don't know. We'll see next week.
We'll see.
Hopefully.
My partner and I were joking when he used to root. You probably remember this when we used to watch American football. Anytime he predicted someone to win and he rooted for, especially if you rooted for them, how badly they would do. Like I wasn't really pushing for Fernando this week, and look, I did. So maybe I need to not concentrate on Fernando.
Yeah. And so you're the jinx.
Am I the jinx? Am I jinxing my Fernando? Because if that's the case, I've got to start rooting for Max. Because then,
please. Have Robbie root for Max, please. Like, yes.
He already does.
Oh, well, then the jinx for him is not working anymore.
Well, that's on his football. Mine might be on F1. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. That's what you're saying. I get it now.
I might have to. Anyway,
Max he was so relaxed before the race. And listen, I think not a surprise. I think everybody expected him to win today. But when I saw him, he took the camera. And I think I put this on our stories, but he took the McLaren social media camera and was interviewing the drivers. It must have been either before probably as they were getting ready for the drivers parade or something. And it was it was actually super cute. But all I kept thinking is, like, he is so relaxed right now. And I know when my son especially played golf and he was that loose and it was just like having fun and kind of goofing and laughing, he would go out and play lights out. And it was just like, Max is ready. He is going to get in that car. He doesn't have to, it's going to be second nature to him and he's going to win.
Yeah. And I don't recall the exact wording and because I might kind of glass over when he's on interviews, but I do recall them talking to him in one of his interviews, like before the race, about, his dominance and I think they were asking him, did he find it boring or was he getting just kind of, is it more blasé because he's just winning all the time? Is it not a challenge or something like that? And he pretty much talked about how he doesn't take it for granted, that he still likes to go out and do a good job. He still finds it very exciting and he still loves the competitiveness and working with it all. And he was giving compliments to the other drivers or whatnot and basically not taking it for granted. And I was like, okay, you're just trying to make me like you, because that was like a really nice thing, the way he was approaching all of that. And I might be putting a lot of words into it, but that's just the feeling I got from, that conversation. So
I think Max was all right. And I think the more he shows his true personality instead of just like the competitor persona, I think people are like, oh, wait, he does seem kind of cool. He still seems a little on the nerdy, like goofy side, like he's still hoping all the cool kids will like him kind of a thing. But like, there's things that I like. And I thought that was super cute this morning. What the other thing, and we don't have to talk a ton about Red Bull because like you said, they're winning. We've talked about them off and on. But I noticed on all the starts, he seemed to instantly have a huge gap right off the bat. Like his starts are always on point. Today, it just seemed like they were even more on point, and he was out. He was out. Like,
yeah, the last one, Alonso stayed on top of him right after the red flag. I mean, that's a different type of start. But he did stay on him up until the last lap and a half or so. Then he started pulling away more. But he stayed within a second or so of him for most of the first couple laps.
Yeah, that is amazing. One thing I did want to say about Checo, so they said after the race that, because we know he got the 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, he was over and like just barely over that little line. So first of all, barely over the little line where they start to calculate that, but he was over by a half a mile per hour, like minuscule amount. It was like 0.08 or something. And I thought, you know what? Red Bull has deserved penalties more than just today, in my opinion. I think that they get away with a lot.
I'm pretty sure Max impeded someone, but
yeah, I think they get away with a lot in general. And it's like, this is the one that you want to give a penalty on, but like 0.08 over miles per hour and this much over the line.
When they called it, it was like, we've been in red flag for how long? It was a 45-minute delay, and then we get to starting, and they're like, "Oh, this happened." It's like, when did it happen? When he came back from the oh, that's when he did it. Okay, that's why I was thinking, when did he do it? So when they were, by the way, in the app, they were having all kinds of problems resetting the lap times because they did that so the telemetry systems out there would get everybody on the same lap, right? Because not everybody, that's what they were explaining, is that the people who came in from the red flag, some came in sooner than others, and they had to get everybody on the same lap. Well, they were saying like 2-minute lap times or whatnot. For the ones that had to go out and do that fix, they were showing 42-minute lap times.
Oh,
and then all of a sudden, these get fixed, and as theirs are fixed, the ones that didn't have to get fixed started showing 42-minute lap times, and then those started getting fixed. It was so interesting watching them fix the telemetry. I'm like, maybe you didn't need to do that because you still had to fix your times. It was kind of interesting.
42-minute lap times, that's hysterical. But that's the other reason, like maybe you let that penalty slide because you told him he had to go around to get into position because he was already in, he was coming in the pits and got new tires when the red flag was brought out. So like he wouldn't have done that.
All the other drivers that went around and came back through didn't speed through the pit either. So
wow. They didn't all have to go. They didn't all have to go out though. He was the only one that did that.
No, several. They all except for there was like 5 drivers. 5 drivers did not, and 13 drivers did.
Oh, I thought. Okay.
No, they started sending more out. It was like just basically the leaders didn't have to go back around because several had pitted earlier, and then the ones that pitted late after the red flags were the ones that did not have to go back around. There were several drivers that had to have everything reset.
Okay.
It started out with just them, and then they sent a lot more drivers out. And I only know that because, again, I was looking at the app and watching all those numbers. So it was like 13 drivers were screwed up, and then the other 5 got screwed up, and then they all got fixed.
Oh, got you. Okay, I get it now. Yes, I am slow on the understanding today. Okay, I was just going to say, I think this was a great place for Max to win or to tie the 9 straight. I mean, his home race. But you know what I thought was, I don't remember seeing any orange flares today. Is this like the first track where we haven't had the orange flares, or did I just miss it? Again,
at the end I saw a bunch of orange smoke, but that was at the end.
Okay, maybe I just missed it. Again, I'm not fully paying attention. The other thing I did think was really cool was on the podium, Delano. We've talked about him a few times. He was the young driver. He's a Dutch driver that lost his life at Spa, right? It was Spa. Earlier this season. His dad was the one that gave Max the gold medal on the podium. And so I thought it was nice that the FIA and F1 had his dad come and kind of represent and, just to honor Delano another way,
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay, we're rounding up to another hour and a half. An hour So
here we go.
what do
We're
we
going to
have
get through
on
this.
the grid? We wrap it
Yep.
up.
2 things. So last Sunday, Valtteri was racing again, but he was in Colorado where he spent most of his, I think he spent the majority of his summer break in Colorado. They were doing a lot of biking in different parts of like Aspen and Colorado Springs. But last Sunday, he did a 100-mile bike ride and he finished 20th out of 1,000 riders. Like, insane. So Valtteri is racing, whether it's bikes or cars, he's racing every weekend. The day before, they have some sort of like a hill climb contest, and he was dressed as Duff Man.
It was hysterical.
The Simpsons.
Oh my gosh. I was dying. That was hysterical.
He is so funny, but he won best costume. So, like,
how could you not? It was perfect.
I know. I love Valtteri. I think he lives life to the fullest. He is so fun. But I have a new documentary series I want you to watch, and I'm not going to go into all the stuff, but it's called Fernando. It's on Amazon Prime. It's like 2 seasons, but I think the first season's only like maybe 6 or 7 episodes. I think they're filming it in 2019, maybe 2020, somewhere in there. So it really focuses when he was retired from F1 and how he went and, did the Indy race, and he was doing Le Mans, and he won Le Mans twice, by the way, Dakar, like all of this stuff. But one of the things I thought was so interesting is like both him and his family and his friends were talking about just how smart he is and how he could like study for like 40 minutes. So he said he would set his alarm, get up at 4:30 or 4, study till like 4:40, go back to sleep. And then he would basically memorize, like if he had to read pages 17 through 35, he would just basically memorize them. And like his ability to focus and concentrate and then also be aware of what else is happening around him is insane. And wow. It's just like, that is why we see him when he's racing, giving advice, talking about what the rules are, watching the TV screens, like, and being his own strategist and knowing everything that's going on. He is so smart and so like on it. It was, I don't know. So far, I'm not all the way through it yet, but it's really, really cool. And I think especially like, because I know you say like, it's good to see him like wanting to win, or it's good to see him really pushing. My thing has always been, he is like, the car just is not like, he also knows what the limitations are. And I think that he has lightened up a little bit about like, being number one. He will say flat out, like, if I'm not good at something, I'm not going to do it. Like he won't attempt it. But if he is good at it, then he's going all out for it. And so, yeah, anyways, I just think you should watch it. It's so good. So it's on Amazon Prime. Okay, next week, back-to-back races. We've got the Italian GP, aka Monza. Yay! It's the 94th Italian Grand Prix. It's one of the oldest circuits on the calendar. This is a home race for Ferrari. The Tifosi are going to be out in force, and we do not want to see nonsense. I'm just going to say that. We don't want to see it. So it is the fastest track on the F1 calendar. Cars average over 260 kilometers or 161 miles per hour per lap. They call it the Cathedral of Speed, and it's one of F1's most iconic venues, right? It's been around for a long time. It's one of, I think, only a couple that has been on the F1 calendar since the get-go. Like, they've been racing there since 1922, but I think it's been on the F1 calendar since the beginning.
Yeah, that's one of the ones. I think that's the one that someone told me, if you've got to go to one, that's F1. That's the one you have to go to.
And do you remember we talked about going? And then we're like, nah, maybe we should have. I don't know. Next year. So it's 53 laps, 2 DRS zones, 5.793 kilometers, 11 corners, which is less than most of the other circuits. But it allows cars to go full throttle. So 80% of the lap, the cars are going all out, full throttle, all the way through. That's why it's called, whatever, the Cathedral of Speed. In the park section, there are some chicanes, and so they've really got to get on the brakes. So you imagine you're going full out on some of these straights, and then all of a sudden you've got to get on the brakes. So that's going to be super, super, super interesting. lots of overtaking availabilities. Hamilton has won here at 5 times. He's tied with Schumacher for that. So hopefully we'll see Mercedes making a little bit of a bounce back next week, and he can be out there.
That much open and whatnot, it'll be interesting because you've got Williams that does well and that kind of track, right? And McLaren, maybe they'll perform. Martin's been better, so
Aston Martin.
It could give Red Bull a run for their money on this track. So
it could be so interesting, but at least hopefully a lot of action, which is awesome. Oh, and I totally forgot. Like, let me see if I can move my thing. My little love sign is kind of like the side of the McLarens this weekend with their logo. Yeah. So I don't know, something to look forward to. One more race week. Woo!
Yay!
Yay!
All right. Well, thanks for everyone for hanging out. I know it's another long one, but it's hard to get it all down any less than that, especially when you have something like this weekend where so much happened. It was exciting. It was so exciting.
A great welcome back to racing for the second half of the season.
Absolutely. Great way to start off the second half of the season. All right. Well, we'll be back at it next weekend. Thanks for everyone for coming along. And I will see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.